Good morning. This is Alida Schuyler. Welcome to the second of three webinars on the roots of recovery coaching. And this is the second in the series. We started last week. I'm looking for something on my screen. Okay. We started last week with looking at completing your past. This one today is about the present. It's called The Present is a Gift. And what we're going to do today is somewhat similar to what we did last week in terms of looking at um, Werner Erhard's contributions and then seeing where Thomas Leonard, who started the very first coaching school, took those concepts and then we're going to apply them to addiction recovery. So the one next week will be about the future. So again, this is just a little review of last week. Advanced recovery coaching is really a combination of life coaching and then best practices from addiction recovery, and uh, and so you'll see that there's aspects of you'll be able to see the application, I believe. Yeah. So again, just as a review, the key influencers that PhD person Vicky Brock did, um, found that Thomas Leonard and Werner Erhard were the key contributors to what we call life and business coaching. And Werner Erhard was a founder of S, which was and Thomas Leonard worked for him. So EST began in the 1970s, that should say 1970s, and more than 200,000 people took EST training. The influences of what he did are still really quite easily visible if you go back and look at what EST was trying to help people understand, and then you can see where it spread out and was used particularly in business, and because they found it to be something that really returned their increase their return rates. Okay, so Thomas Leonard was a father of coaching. He uh, he began coaching in the early 1990s. He started Coach U. He eventually sold that and started Coachville, but he has been a major influence on the other coaching schools because he basically taught them how to do that. And this is taking um, a lot of what Leonard did was take the concepts from EST, which was done at a group level, and begin and figure out how to apply them at an individual level through coaching. And last week we were talking about why it was important to complete your past, and basically um, we live in reaction to it, and and are stuck by those early age decisions, our beliefs about ourselves, the things about ourselves that we feel like we need to help other people understand and get and defend and identify with, and all of that kind of behavior keeps one from being able to truly experience joy and love and self-expression. So we last week we looked at Erhard's formula, and so he really believes that our identity comes from our past, and that if you can become what he called complete with your past, then you won't be influenced by those old beliefs about yourself, or how things should be, and it opens up the possibility for thinking in new ways, for seeing new solutions, for independent thinking, and for the possibility of creating something that you could not even imagine uh, before. And so he also really he was very interested in language and its influence. So he thinks that basically all of this is going to occur through language in terms of what our identity, our beliefs, and so he wanted to use language in terms of creating our future. And so he believes that by stating what it is that we want, and now I just understand this was all 1970s stuff. So this is all really commonplace now, but he was really the first to say that we needed to claim what we wanted, and to declare it. So if one declares a future that is truly attractive, it has its own gravitational pull, and it'll affect how you live in the now. And almost all the coaching schools I've ever encountered teach that. So today we're gonna spend some time looking at how Erhard um, viewed the present moment in terms of being able to be in what he called self rather than in mind. And mind, he believes, is what keeps us connected to the past. Then we're going to look at Thomas Leonard's Personal Foundation, which was something he wrote for Coach U, and it was all about perfecting the present moment so that you could be successful, particularly um, as a coach, since he was running a coaching school at the time. And then we'll look at steps for creating a perfect now in addiction recovery. So Earhart was spent a lot of time thinking about mind and self, and he developed some original ideas. A lot of these things are things that you'll find in philosophy and religion, but he did have some ways of thinking about mind and self that were a bit different. So he basically believed um, that the mind its job is to protect one's identity or anything that one sees as being personal and important, and that it does that by recording and really storing anything that ever was a challenge to you, a stressful or traumatic experience, and then whenever in the present moment there's something that reminds one of the past, then this whole series of events occurs that are basically unconscious, uh, in which the mind runs a pattern so that you will not experience pain again as you did in the past. So, in contrast, Erhard's idea about self was really, he didn't think it was, necessarily, there was no spiritual connotation that he implied, but definitely self is not personal, so it's bigger. He thought of it as the context of all contexts. So he thought of it as the matrix from which everything else emerges, including our experience and our sense of identity. Um, and so if one was able to be in self, one that meant that you could be in the present moment, because otherwise, if you weren't in the present moment through self, then you were definitely in mind, and mind is all about protection and making sure the past doesn't reoccur. So Erhard, you know, when you start to look at the S stuff, it's like, three parts, um, dealing with the mind in such a way that it changes, and and self can begin to emerge. But anyway, so we'll see that there's a lot here about the mind, and there's I think the things I've seen are less articulate exactly about what he meant by self, but I'm gonna add some thoughts to it. So anyway, so Erhard believed that, and he's still alive. He's probably living in Eastern Europe somewhere. But anyway, that the mind was the source of suffering, and that it has these various scripts and programs that it runs that are more or less mechanical, and they don't vary a great deal, and that it keeps the mind keeps us out of the present and stuck in the past. So, and that mind is also the cause of a lot of human suffering, in as much as mind also protects identity, in the sense of I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm Catholic, I'm Buddhist. All of the various ways that we have of identifying ourselves, that we operate from. He thought that those were really, sort of a form of politics, and the source of righteousness and domination, and hence war. And I don't know that I actually heard him ever say that, but he's gone around the world helping, after he left the United States, going around the world helping different groups of people who are in struggle with one another, find new ways to think about their relationships, and complete their past, and have a different future. So, the mind that he talks about is a great deal of what we think of as self-image might be. And so all of these ideas about identity, where we identify with what we've done or what we want, or um, you know, physical self or moral self or house, car, all of that he would see as a mind based identity. And so the S trainings were, organized to, really bring the mind to its knees, more or less. So very, very confrontational. Beliefs were challenged, reactions were challenged. Any efforts to dominate, or all of that was continuously challenged in the S programs. Um, and I mean, if you read them, they're quite harsh, and I know I wouldn't have enjoyed being in there. It might have been good for me, but I wouldn't have liked it. Uh, and I have heard that the people who did best in there were not necessarily people who were in recovery from addiction. What they would have called restoratives, people who had enough challenges that they needed a whole restoration. Anyway, so attitudes were challenged. All of this goes on, day after day, and 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 it wasn't done, randomly, or out of any malice or anything like that. But he believed that you needed to really set up a situation, uh, to challenge something that was so ingrained that it was absolutely unlikely to change um, without this kind of experience. So they spent, lots of time, doing presentations on about the mind. They talked about all of the, mind structures, which might be such things as, the way whether or not you have multiple personality sort of parts, or is that how your mind is organized, or are you entirely on the side of logic, and you have no connection with your creativity. So just mind structures. The traps were sort of beliefs and stuck ideology, things like resentments, or regrets, all of those were traps of cycles of things that the mind would do. Um, and I think the life programs we talked about in terms of those identities of self in bigger ways, like I'm Catholic or I'm Baptist or I'm in Narcotics Anonymous or who knows. But anyway, then the last piece had to do. He really also caused people to recognize the ways in which they were triggered in the present moment were based on these repressed incidences from the past, and um, and he would have them go back and re-experience those traumas, but this time helping them do it from an observing point of view, and noticing the things that they had decided about themselves and all of that kind of thing, and that those decisions and beliefs and attitudes were truly optional. So all of that was done, so that so that this experience of self could emerge. So he thought that being able to be in self, only occurs when one is open and undefended, which means that basically you've given up those the need to defend yourself, the need to see things in a certain way, um, and that when one could operate from self, there was a sense of wholeness, a sense of completeness, a sense of sufficiency. And when I see those words, I can't help but think about, the people in recovery programs who talk about, you know, feeling like there's a hole inside that they had to fill with drugs. So this would be a really different experience than when one is in self. He also believed that morality really changed. So instead of being morality being you're following what I believe are the important commandments, or you're doing what I think good people do, that that the ability was there from this self to intuitively know how to behave and respond in the moment, and that it wouldn't be based on some particular unchosen way, reactionary way of being. And so all of this meant that having given up all these old programs, these old ideas, these ways of defending yourself, the ways of identifying yourself, and being able to truly be in the moment, um, made it possible for happiness, that you would have vitality, creativity, happiness. And so one of the interesting things about Earhart is that he had an experience driving across the uh, Golden Gate Bridge, I believe, in which he experienced himself as self, and that day gave up. He used to smoke 3 to 4 packs of cigarettes a day and drink 20 or so cups of coffee. Um, and he just stopped that. He just completely stopped all of that. So, so there's something that he knew about in terms of what the experience of self could be like. I guess I'm going to talk about self just for a moment in maybe terms that I think are common now. So people talk about being able to observe. Part of meditation is to just notice your thoughts as they go by and to not react. Um, but and so there are a lot of things that teach us about how to be in self. He doesn't think it's truly possible to dismantle the mind. Um, but one, I just want to say one could observe. The simple act of observing isn't necessarily the same as being in self, because um, many of us have an internal critic that's observing what we do and then commenting on it in a negative way. So that would not, even though there's observation going on, that wouldn't be an example of self, because self is clearly not going to be in judgment. It's going to come from curiosity. It'll be a centered place. It won't be trying to identify things as right or wrong. It'll be quite neutral and curious and interested. Um, and that's the impression that I get about what he means by self. So, his idea was that you had to complete the past in order to be able to really make this shift from mind to self, and that if you didn't, then you would always be run by the automatic programs and reactions of the mind, and that when mind is in charge, it's continually searching the present moment for anything that might possibly resemble a painful event from the past, and then these automatic reactions kick in. And basically, I would say that in our common language now, um, that's how we get triggered. And so his belief was that when you operate from mind, that life is a continually painful experience, because it's always looking for whatever could be construed as a threat, and that the mind could make associations that were basically uh, could possibly be even absurd. But if you're in survival mode, then it's all pretty serious. So anyway, um, and so watching him and seeing, I've watched a number of interviews with him and this and that. Um, he Earhart himself really truly became somebody who was able to completely talk about himself, to say, which is true, I abandoned my first family, my wife, my children. I took up a new name. I left the state. I moved to somewhere else. I claimed a new wife, um, and I created immense amount of harm. And part of his completing the past was to make amends to his family. They all rallied around him. But anyway, he is quite remarkable in how present he is, and that he's okay with himself. So we're going to move in. This says, I just stuck a couple quotes in here. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow's a mystery. The present is a gift. That's why they call it the present. So we're going to look now at Thomas Leonard's work. So Thomas Leonard worked for Earhart for, I believe, 8 years, and not he. Leonard was a financial guy, so I believe he was working for Earhart in terms of finances, but he clearly learned a lot about EST and all of that. He eventually left, and in order to develop life coaching, and which he did. I mean, he's the one who put life coaching on the map. Um, and as part of that, he started the first coach training school, which is still exists. It's called Coach U, and Coach U still has all of this material that Thomas Leonard wrote. So I've always found Thomas Leonard kind of amusing. I don't know if you all will find him amusing, but I do, and we'll take a moment. So the personal foundation program consisted of all of these different things that were lists, and we'll see one in a moment. So he would have lists of basically things that you needed to do or achieve in order to know that you were up to snuff in these various areas. And so we'll take a look at, and all of these had different names: the Needless Program, the Clean Sweep Program, um, the Zap the Tolerations Program, the Simplify Your Life Program, the Get Your Needs Met Program. All of these were organized in the same way. They all included these things. So the Clean Sweep Program, this is the example I'm going to use. So it covered body, relationships, physical surroundings, and financial affairs. And so these are just examples. So for each of those areas, there were 25 different items that you either existed now, in which case you could check them off, or that you needed to do in order to get a point. And so there were 25 things related to body, 25 things related to relationships, 25 things related to physical surroundings, 25 things related to finances. And and so they go. I mean, these lists go on and on. And I enrolled in Coach U in 1997, and what you got then was you got a series of boxes that came that were just pages and pages and pages of these kinds of programs that these lists that he made for his various things. Um, so he had lists. These are just some of the ones that he created. Um, and Thomas Leonard honestly lived this way. So I don't do errands ever. I don't do my own laundry or housework. These were things that he thought that when you had these in your life, that your present moment was, well, first of all, they helped complete the past. Being able to tell your parents you love them, being able to um, you know, sort it out so there's not anybody anywhere that you aren't able to be with face to face and be comfortable with. Um, but anyway, in addition to all of that, then here are the things you want in your current life, and so um, honestly, the Coach U grads, may spend a year or more taking classes. They can take as long as they want, as far as I know. Um, and while they're taking classes on listening and all of these various coaching skills, they're also taking these personal foundation classes and working this stuff in their life, being coached on it, coaching others on it, and trying to get higher and higher points in all of these different areas. I listened to a tape of Thomas Leonard coaching the other day, and Thomas talked a lot as a coach, and believed in giving advice, which is typically not done by coaches. But anyway, um, he told this fellow that he never did anything that he didn't want to do, that he didn't believe in willpower or motivation, or and he definitely didn't believe that you should do anything that you didn't enjoy and you weren't good at. And so, as far as I know, he truly lived like that. Uh, so when we're in this next section, really, some of this is things that I've developed over time when working with recovery clients, and and so all of these are are really intended, in my opinion, so that somebody has a quality of life that is sufficient and good enough that that going back out or using again, relapsing, drinking, shooting drugs, whatever, whatever, overeating, all of those things, the urge isn't there, and you wouldn't want to trade your life for a past because your current life is truly better than it was. So we're going to look at just briefly. Last week, the whole thing was about completing your past, and so we won't spend too long on that. Um, and we'll spend the most time on the last one. But these are the things that I think are really important, and things that our recovery coach is going to work with their clients on. So many people who are in 12-step programs have distinct instructions on how to take a personal inventory and notice what's your wrongs, and have a higher power help you overcome those shortcomings and all of that, and you make amends. So um, and Earhart talked about making amends. I mean, he clearly had to do that with his first family. It takes a lot of courage to face all of that. But what doing that does is it frees up an immense amount of energy. Um, One of the things that my own experience told me was that doing the steps that I did in Alcoholics Anonymous um, did a great deal to improve my life and free up my mind. But I personally didn't take all of those resentments and things quite to the level of forgiveness. And eventually I needed to do that. And I came up with my own way of being able to forgive. I didn't come from a family that modeled it, so I had to figure out how to do it on my own. But basically, um, it's something I've been able to do, and I'm pretty much comfortable with the people in certainly comfortable with all the people I typically see, and there's really not anybody that I wouldn't be able to sit down with. So that's a result of those first two pieces there. Last week we saw the power of TED, how to move off of the victim triangle to the empowerment triangle, and that's the basic shift is the shift from having an identity that's organized around one's past and what happened and how we were basically mistreated or victimized. And it's not ever saying that those things didn't happen. It's really the ability to be at peace with them. And so when you can drop a sense of identity as shift from identity as a victim to identity as a creator, that is a really huge shift. And so there's a lot of places that you can. I do like David Emerald's books. He's got one called The Power of TED, and then TED for Diabetes. Um, and that's really what they are talking about is making the shifts. So um, I think that you know it's really easy to create a life in recovery that is so jammed and busy and run by trying to make up for our past that it's just a jangle of efforts, and there's very little time that you actually can slow down. So I think that's an important piece to create a life that's simple enough and workable enough that you can do it. Thomas Leonard really believed that if you had your life going well, that you would end your day feeling as excited and charged as you did in the beginning. And he didn't want there to be any distinction between work and play for him. He wanted to enjoy his work so much that for him it was just fun. So anyway, one of the things that I've noticed is that people who are making a transition from an addiction based life to a recovery based life um, can still have habits, old habits about pain and um, how they deal with it that really need to change. And so that has to do with having a high tolerance for pain in a sense. So, and by pain, I don't just mean physical pain, but emotional pain, chaos, all of those things are familiar because um, typically when you're using drugs, you don't actually deal with the problems, you just deal with the feelings by taking some type of drug to make them go away. So there can be a habit of just ignoring things, and that habit doesn't necessarily stop when you stop using. You can still just tolerate difficult relationships, tolerate painful circumstances, and I believe that it's really important to begin to shift from just tolerating things to responding to them. And so, what I call an early responder is someone who recognizes that if there's pain, there's something wrong. And so, if there's physical pain, gee, something in my body needs some attention. If there's emotional pain, I have a need that's not being met. Um, I can figure out what it is and make requests or see how I can deal with myself or make requests of others. And so if you are an early responder, you're going to deal with things early before they become a problem. And so there's so many things that if you respond to them early are they're not that difficult to solve. They're much more difficult to solve when you've allowed them to become entrenched. So anyway, um, and I just want to say something about creating structure, support, and accountability to stay on track because one of the ways that people in early recovery can experience life is they flip between over dependency and kind of having an anti-dependent way of being. So they don't notice their own needs. They don't ask for help. They believe they should do everything themselves, or that they don't. That's the anti-dependent side, or that somebody else should do it for them, and they'd like to be rescued. Um, but if you will take responsibility, then you're going to have interdependency, and you can have help in terms of creating structure and support and accountability. One of the things this slide comes from the work of Carol Dweck. She's done a great deal of research on learning and what allows people to succeed, and she's done it with different ages of school children, high school students, college students. And it turns out that having an achievement orientation isn't predictive of success, because when you are organized around accolades and prizes and things like that, then you really don't want to do something unless you're good at it. And they're going to avoid trying something new that they don't think they'll be good at. And it turns out that they also tend to feel helpless when things go wrong and get depressed. So they think that their failure to do something right is indicative of who they are rather than how they're behaving. And so they feel worthless, and they think they're not smart enough or not good enough. And since they're not smart enough and not good enough, there's no point in trying, and so they quit. Um, and so it turns out that a lot of the kids who do really well in early, in elementary school, um, don't do well in the long run because they're achievement oriented. So the shift is to having a learner orientation, and that uh, has a really different mindset. They're much better at self monitor, what she calls self monitoring. I bet Earhart would think it's the ability to observe. And anyway, and they're better. Their self talk is better. They talk themselves through problems and look for solutions. They actually enjoy things that are challenging, um, and they see things. Obstacles as just normal. Like, this is what happens, and I know I'll find a way through this. Isn't it interesting? I know I'm going to learn something here, and so they stay focused on solutions. Um, I think that the people who do well in recovery are the people who can keep this ongoing orientation towards growth and being, they don't get freaked out if they don't do things perfectly. They wouldn't give up if they drank or used drugs again, because they might just really wonder what it is that went wrong, and they might look to see what they need to do differently, and they'll figure out a way to do it differently so that problem doesn't happen again. Whereas somebody who says, "Geez, I might as well give up because I'm clearly not the kind of person that can do this," um, I suspect some of the people that we see who aren't able to manage as well as others are people who take that stuff and make it mean that they're no good, and will never make it. Okay, so this is an important shift, and one that I'm when I coach my clients, I'm continually trying to help them stay in a learner orientation, and learn from their experiences. So we're going to spend really the rest of the time on empowering habits. Um, and I'm somebody that has a lot of years now in recovery. I mean, I guess I'm in my 30th year, and we'll get my 30th chip in August. Good Lord willing, and all of that. Um, and I can see that I would have done better if I'd spent more time developing good habits early along. I'll just say it that way. And so but these are the places that in my coaching of other people, these are the places that we are continually working. Um, there's there's a saying in AA, an old saying about the uh, main causes of slips are finance and romance. Um, People in recovery often have challenges with money, and I have challenges with physical surroundings. So anyway, let's take a look at some empowering habits here. One of the things we talked about last week was the ACE study on the correlation between childhood traumas and health. If you guys might remember, if you had four or more uh, childhood traumas, you were 6 times more likely to become an alcoholic. You were twice as likely to get cancer. You were 4 times as likely to get emphysema. So there's a very high correlation between uh, the types of childhood experiences that you had and your physical well being as an adult. So I really take health very seriously in terms of trying to help people develop good habits. And so I could go on and on about all of these, um, but I'm not going to. I will just say that the efforts that you put into giving your body what it wants, ultimately the money you spend on higher quality food or um, getting uh, good medical care, good alternative medical care, massage, body work, all of those things, all of those dollars, I think, end up being saved because you can maintain good health, develop or maintain good health. The possibility for that is definitely there, but we know that there's a lot of PTSD, there's a lot of mental health issues, all associated with addiction, and so anyway, so one of the places that you can make a difference is in taking care of your physical body, and so it's uh, you might think of it as the vehicle for your consciousness, and that it needs to be taken good care of, just as your prize car, or even better. Okay, so I spend a lot of time working with money habits with people, and I had to start in on this stuff when the moment I came into recovery. I could see that I had been extremely irresponsible with money, um, and had very few skills about how to do anything differently. One of the first things that I needed to learn to do was learn how to balance a checkbook. Um, Eventually, I needed to learn how to support myself, and um, and so one of the things, so some of the money patterns that are associated with people still in recovery, they tend to be there's a lot of under earning. So people who have low self esteem, which many people start out with in recovery, tend to undercharge. So they don't charge as much as somebody else with normal self esteem would. Women tend to charge less than men. That's just a gender pattern with money. Um, but that when people under earn, then it impacts a couple of things. They often use credit cards to make ends meet, can get in serious credit card trouble. Um, they uh, they often aren't saving. There's sort of the one day at a time point of view doesn't really suggest that you're going to have to live at some point, either work for the rest of your life or never retire. But there are many, many people in recovery, and I would also say women who just simply never have developed good money habits. So these are some of the things that will help you get the habits that make it possible for you to truly meet your own needs and have a future that um, that looks good. So tracking is tracking is the key habit that allows one to be in financial recovery, and it really is just a habit and I've seen people do it. I've done it myself. I've gone in and out of all of these things. I can tell you for certain that when I do these things, I earn more, and I just flat out do better. So um, basically, the first habit is just to start tracking every penny you spend. when I started doing that, I had no idea that I spent $40 a month on coffee, that, and so because of tracking, I began to make better choices, which I would have been completely unconscious of if I didn't begun to track. Tracking allows you to use a spending plan. If you want to find one, you can find one in the book called Overcoming Under Earning, or How to Get Out of Debt and Stay Out of Debt and Live Prosperously. Both those books will teach you how to track and use a spending plan. The thing about a spending plan that's different than tracking is a spending plan also estimates what money's going to come in and what money's going to go out, and do I have enough, and if I don't, I still have time to get cracking and earn more money. um, the pause is a very handy habit. It's very simple. The pause is somebody says, Alida, how much would you charge to come and talk at this addiction conference? And I pause, and either I already know, um, or I say, let me think about that, and I'll work up some numbers, and I'll get back to you. Or and then I move into this next one. So, but the pause is just always giving yourself the space to give a very considered answer, or to just give yourself the time you need to make a good decision. So you can use that with um, things with your time and energy. Would you like to, volunteer at the book fair? And you pause and think about whether that's a good use of your time and energy, whether you want to do it, whether it makes you happy, and then you answer, because our knee-jerk reactions are those scripts of the mind, which says, one script might be, I want everyone to like me, and so I say yes. So the pause is a very handy thing to learn. The resentment number is, so, somebody asked me, what would you charge to speak at this conference? And I'm like, I'm thinking how much time it's going to take, and and how much I'd be willing to do it for, and what if I got less than that, I'd be pissed. So that number where I'm like just above being pissed is my resentment number. If I get less, I'm not happy. So the key is to double it. And this is basically um, a negotiation. So if my resentment number was $750, I'm going to ask $1,500 to speak. And then I'm in a good position, because I'm I'm I'll still be okay if we negotiate somewhere between my resentment number and what's double. But oftentimes people will just go, okay, great. So anyway, that's an empowering habit to uh, with with uh, with money. I better move along a little quicker. Um, in terms of relationships, one of the things to know about yourself is if you were raised in an alcoholic home or an addicted home, your love map, uh, your interest in who you are attracted to, was created by those very parents who were addicted, and so the vibration of addiction is paired with, for you, in the vibration of love. And so it's really easy to get into bad relationships if you start relationships just based on attraction. And so I was told once to not fall in love, to rise in love. And maybe I'll give a talk about that sometime. There's quite a lot to say about it. Um, but just to notice that reaction, and really make sure you're making a good choice. I'm with my present, what I call my common law husband, Paul. Been with him, I think, 10, 11 years, something like that. And I got this relationship by just asking my higher power to find my next partner. Because even in recovery, I didn't make terribly good choices. Absolutely nothing happened for 6.5 years. I didn't date. I didn't look at men. I didn't do anything except be with myself and wait. And eventually, I met Paul. So, the idea of an arranged marriage is pretty simple. It's getting clear about, one way to do it would be to think about what would you want for your daughter or your best friend? What kind of person would you like for them? And to be practical, which means you're going to look at economics, education, temperament, any factors that you consider important, and that you and again, this is what you'd want for your daughter or your best friend. And actually, to listen to people who love you and want the best for you. Ask them what they think you might need. What I learned, at least about myself, was that I needed a steady Eddie. Um, I'm a dramatic and uh, I'm a four on the Enneagram, for those of you who know what that means. I'm pretty moody. I, and what I really don't need is somebody else who's just like me. And so, uh, what So, I mean, and what a different thing. I mean, most of us are not out there looking for reasonable, solid people. We're looking for those, creative, difficult people that we are attracted to. That's what we think. And so really the empowering habit is to, to practice being with people who actually are stable, who are steady, and so you can look for Steady Eddie or Steady Betty. Either one might be just perfect. I definitely, I wouldn't trade Paul, who's a very steady fellow, for any of those other really interesting screwballs that I used to hang out with. I just wouldn't do it. So, this is probably not my strong point, but because it's a place that I still struggle, I can say I wish I had developed empowering habits in this area earlier in life. I've been working on it for years, but so I just tossed these on here. I put on Make Your Bed because a lot of us were not necessarily raised by parents who were organized and focused on helping us develop good habits. So that one just stands in for, maybe one of those early things that you weren't taught to do. I know I wasn't. And that it can just hold a place for you to recognize that you care about yourself and what what your life around you looks like and feels like. Creating space. My younger brother taught me one of the first things I learned, which things look neater if you put them in parallel lines. It alters the space between them. But also, just the whole thing. There's a high correlation between under earning and clutter. Um, and so, creating space can be about decluttering. It can be about replacing things um, with things that actually work instead of having two or three things that don't work. There are many, many books out there on how to on organizing and that kind of thing. But just that idea that if you can't figure out what else to do, try creating space. I'm pretty high on the thinking comfort is important. I like comfortable furniture, and I will probably put that before beauty. But I also really like beauty, and those things together, um, I think they're really beautiful when you can get them to get comfort and beauty in the same item, in the same space. And do it or hire it. Thomas Leonard has helped me to recognize that. it's just fine if I want to hire help. And for me, this would be one of the places, and I actually don't have anybody at the moment, but I'm about to hire somebody else to who will just, come in and do the things I don't want to do, and and help me create that life. So, in reverse order, this is just what we looked at today. We looked at those steps of art that had to do with the body and relationships and money and our physical surroundings, and in terms of really developing good habits in those areas. We saw Thomas Leonard's personal foundation program that is really a big piece of Coach U, and a lot of the coaches spend their time helping their clients develop that personal foundation. Um, that foundation is really about being able to have a present moment that is truly enjoyable, and that is uh, a place that you can stand that's solid and meaningful. And what Earhart says is that, if you've made this transformation from the scripts of the mind to being able to be in self, then from then your present moment, it won't be run by your past, and from that present moment you can continue to imagine a future and believe that it's possible, because your now is really pretty good. So hey, why wouldn't the future be possible? So anyway, um to really, sorry, let me drink the water. So to be able to be in the now, both so you can be free of the past, and from that empowered now to be able to have a good future that is so inspiring that it helps you continue to grow in the present moment. Um, and then just a reminder that advanced recovery coaching, the ARC, um, it is life coaching and business coaching for people who are either seeking addiction recovery or in recovery, and want to have a really good life. So um, I'm gonna leave us here. This is and I'm gonna look and see if there are questions, because I did learn last week how to. Ah, wait a second. Here we have one more slide. You'll know you're complete with your past when you were at peace with all that has happened and is happening. Um, your present life includes all of these good things, that you have good health, you're enjoying peace and strength, vitality, inspiration, and you can envision a positive and inspiring future. I'll just say in closing that last one, that's a really good clue. Whether, as a person in recovery, you have really finished the work of completing your past and improving your current life. Because if you still don't believe that um, a beautiful future is possible, then there's more work to be done, and I would recommend hiring a coach. Okay, I am going to go look now and see if there are questions. So that's the end of my presentation today. I want to thank you for being here, and take a quick look here. I learned how to do questions here. Ooh, somebody lost their sound. If you have a question, you can just type one in, or put up your hand, and I'm going to see if anybody has any questions about the presentation. I'll also stick around if people have questions about the training. And so I'm going to unmute Dana Gore and see if this hand meant something. Let's see. Hang on a second. Hmm. Oh, I see. Okay. Dana, you have a hand up, and I wondered if you had a question. Oh, okay, I got people are typing in questions. So Paul DeBoof lost his sound. I don't know what happened with that, so I don't know how to answer it. If you missed the first presentation, send me an email and I'll make sure that you can watch that. Someone else is asking, how do you get started in coaching? Um, I'll tell you the answer I was told. I was told to hire a really good coach and to begin coaching. And that's how I started. I began doing what I called monkey see, monkey do coaching. So I would get coached by a very good coach, and I would take the powerful questions I had learned and ask them to the people I had told them they would be my clients. Really, the other way to do it, I mean, so I think it's important to have the experience of being coached, but there are any number of training schools. If you are interested in working with addiction recovery, I'm going to recommend Crossroads because uh, it is you can become accredited by the International Coach Federation. So I'm teaching the core competencies, but we've organized the whole thing around addiction recovery. Let's see what else we have in here. Okay, specifically regarding recovery. So I think I answered that for Dana. If she says, or he says, okay, thank you. Yeah, so I hear people typing, so I'm looking to see if there's more questions. Someone's asked if I'll be speaking in Houston. I don't have any plans, but if you know of a good thing to that you'd like to tell me about, I do like to do public speaking, and um, had a good time in Denver last October. Let's see, can you talk about? So someone has asked, can you talk about your school and what I can expect to learn? I think I'm going to move a little bit to this next slide because it has some of the information there. Um, so basically, you're going to learn the core competencies of coaching, which are organized around listening, powerful questioning, reflecting. You're also going to learn things that are about specific about different addictions. So each of the six modules has a lesson that's specific not to coaching skills per se, but to an addiction. Or and so we've got codependency. Harm reduction is really an alternative approach that is particularly useful if you are dealing with an addiction that is not the plug in the jug type. So you can walk away from alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, but what about food? You can't just walk away from it. So harm reduction is very useful both for meeting people where they are and for helping people with food, sex, that kind of codependency. All of those things benefit from harm reduction. I also talked about the best practices from addiction recovery. So there's a lot in here that is related to that. So, many of you are probably may already know about motivational interviewing and stages of change. Um, and there's a lot of things in here that I think have to do with helping, being able to coach the person who is seeking recovery or in recovery to be able to tolerate their own suffering that they do experience without going back out. So there's lots of the things about flooding and focusing and all of the, clearing triggers and coaching internal parts is all about being able to deal with the talk in your head and the ways you get triggered and all of that. Let's see who else we have. Okay. Um, if any of you want to hear more about the training or anything like that, you can either send me an email, coachalida@gmail, or you can type in a question or comment here and I'll see that after we hang up. So thanks everybody. We have one more, which is uh, about the future. So we've done the past. This is the one on the present, and next week is about creating a perfect future, something like that. Okay, thanks very much, and appreciate you all being here. So I'm going to click this thing, and I think that'll end our program.